at 7:03 p.m. Clerk, would you please produce the flag for the flag salute?
Hold on, I'm sorry. I did not have it up this time for some reason, so give me just 2 seconds. Come on, computer. Sorry. Okay, there it is. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's not showing it to me.
You just do it now.
Let me try again. Hold on. There it is. Okay.
Great, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And clerk, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Brudnicki.
Here.
Councilmember McHenry.
Here.
Councilmember Remington.
Here.
Councilmember Hoag.
Here.
Councilmember Napland.
Here.
Councilmember Langle. She's here.
Yep, she's there. She's on mute.
We have a quorum.
I think we need to get Councilmember Langle. Sure.
I think I got it now.
Okay. All right, thank you. Under consent agenda, for additions or corrections, please add payroll for November 5th, 2020 in the amount of $177,380.83. Payroll for November 20th in the amount of $162,897.60. Claims for November 6th, 2020 through claims for November 6th, 2020 through November 17th, 2020 in the amount of $172,321.32. Under item number 5, please add after closed session, executive session for 5 minutes regarding real estate. And under new business, please move agenda item 7, Agenda Bill 20-107A, Comprehensive Garbage and Recyclables and Compostable Collection Services Contract, to the first item of new business. And then with that, do we have any council members that would like to speak this evening?
I have a brief update, Michelle.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mayor, did you have the executive session? I'm sorry, I did not hear that part.
Executive session after closed session
Perfect, thank you.
for real estate. All right. Anyone else that wanted to speak on council this evening? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve this evening's council agenda?
So moved, Michelle.
Second, McHenry.
So Councilmember Hoag moved, Councilmember McHenry seconded for approval of adoption of the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Do we have a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda, which also includes Agenda Bill 20-92B, resolution adopting a Big Rock Ball Fields use policy?
Mike Remington, so moved.
Dan Brudnicki, second.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Remington moved and Councilmember Brudnicki seconded approval of the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, we move on to comments from the audience. Clerk, there was someone that earlier said they wanted to speak. Oh, it looks like she is on here. So first, because we had advance notice for public comment, I will call on Marcy Manabusan from Waste Management, and then all others that want to speak tonight. We have one other that's put their name in. After these two have spoken, just simply raise your hand and you will have 3 minutes to speak to whatever topic you wish. So with that, Marcy, could you please introduce yourself? And you'll
Hi,
have
thank
3
you.
minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. So my name is Marcy Manabusin, and I'm with Waste Management, the contract manager supporting our contract with the city of Duval. Last time we met was in person in March when I presented our 2019 annual report. Obviously, the world is a little different now, and we're meeting virtually. So I just appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. Very, excited to hopefully continue serving the community of Duval with the new contract that's before you this evening. And I'll be hanging on for the discussion and available for any questions. So very good to see you all, and thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Next up, we had Lisa Yeager, who had put a note in chat. So Ms. Yeager, please introduce yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm Lisa Yeager with the Snow Valley Senior Center, but my home address is 22822 Southeast 45th Street in Fall City. But I wanted to really thank you all for your support through the COVID grants. It's really made a world of difference to Duval's older adults. Every month, every week, we serve more and more meals. We're serving 1,800 meals a month now. The COVID funds that you've given us enabled us to help those who are medically fragile and dependent on the Snow Valley Senior Center to deliver them food and groceries. The number of people that we are serving in the Duval area has doubled since last month. We're going to about 25 households in Duval city limits right now. We are able to deliver them food and groceries, and these funds also enable us to provide one-on-one counseling and support to those who are isolated and alone or are a family caregiver. So thank you so much. And please continue to remember the vulnerable as you work on the 2021-22 budget. Nonprofits provide local jobs and make life better for everyone. So thank you. We need Duval's support now more than ever, but I want you to know how much all that you have done for us has made a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yeager. Is there anyone else on the line that would like to provide public comment this evening? I do see our waste contract consultant has a hand raised. Mr. Brown, is that intentional?
No, it's not.
Okay, I'll go ahead and ask Gandon if there's any member of the public on the line that would like to speak at this time. Not seeing any, we will go ahead and move on to our closed session for collective bargaining for 10 minutes under RCW 42.30.140 sub 4 sub B. And then we will notify the clerk and move into executive session. So we are hoping that the combination of the two only lasts for 15 minutes. The process here is that all of those that are required to be in the closed or executive session will log off this meeting. This meeting will stay active. And once we're done with these sessions, we will log back on to the council meeting. So with that, we are going to close session at 7:12.
Dot, you need to log off of this meeting and go to the other one.
I think she's on 2 different devices.
Oh, I see. Okay. At a minimum, I think you probably should turn off your video then. I can't hear you. You're on mute. Oh, looks like she left. For the record, this is City Clerk Jody Wyckoff. The closed session has been extended 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The closed session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The closed session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The closed session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The closed session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. And on a side note, thank you for your patience. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The closed session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The closed session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is City Clerk Jody Wyckoff. The closed session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The closed session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The closed session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The closed session has concluded at 8:12, and council has entered the executive session regarding lease or purchase of real estate pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1 subsection B. The session begins at 8:12, 8:13, 8:12. And it's scheduled for 5 minutes. If it is extended, I will notify the public. Thank you. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. I want to make a correction to the start time of the executive session. It started at 8:14 because council had to log off of the closed session and re-log in, so it took a couple minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The executive session has been extended 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The executive session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The executive session was extended an additional 5 minutes. Order.
All right. The Duval City Council meeting is back to order at 8:29 p.m. after an extended closed session and an executive session of the council, which by law is closed to the public. So with that, we will move on to scheduled items, and under mayor's report, we're already time-wise running far behind, so I'm going to keep it super short and just, let council know I sent out the preliminary draft legislative agenda. Other than Councilmember Naplin, I haven't heard any feedback from folks on things to add or remove. And barring that, my intention is to bring this up at the next council meeting for full discussion. And then if anybody's interested in working with me on that, I didn't have interest from the ad hoc committee, but if folks want to, just reach out to me and we can schedule a meeting to kind of do as much as we can to button it up sooner rather than later. And then also wanted to let folks know that once we get to that done, our representatives from the 5th legislative district, while they don't represent us, they treat us as if they're our constituents. And they've asked to set up a meeting with me specifically to discuss our agendas. So I'll send an email out to council with the dates. So if there's 2 or 3 of you that would like to participate in that, you're more than welcome to. And we'll just try and get that on the calendar for the month of December. Other than that, I'm going to forego any other reports in the interest of time. And then we had Councilmember Hoag that wanted to speak this evening.
I'll be real brief as well. I just wanted to update you on a Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee meeting I went to this week. One of the items on our agenda was King County Emergency Management Zone Coordinators. And a brief background is King County Emergency Management. They had wanted to convert zone coordinators from independent contractors to positions within King County employee, as a King County employee. And so there was, it's really important for our small city of Duval that we have these zone coordinators. They're kind of a liaison between the King County and our city when it comes to emergencies. And so they have agreed, King County is considering extending this through June 2021 to come up with a better solution for zone coordinators. So I just wanted to.
Thank you. And appreciate you carrying the city message forward with that, council member. Do we have any council committee reports this evening?
No hands, Mayor.
Thank you. So we'll move on to administration update. Ms. Thomas.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be really quick. I have one slide, so I'll go into it hopefully really quick. So as you know, we are continuing our background check for our assistant planner. We're hoping to have that back here in the next week or so. The finance department will begin re-recoupment for their position. The person that they hired wasn't able to take the job. And so stay tuned for that. Obviously, you know that we're going to continue talking about King County growth targets. Larissa and I attended our first regional caucus meeting last week. We're following up with staff member on the methodology and the assumptions. We have some questions on that. We received an updated spreadsheet again, so version 3, but this time it does have the formulas in it. So that's in an internal review right now. I'm also following up with King County staff on providing a presentation to City Council and Planning Commission. They have quite a few cities that have made the request, so I'm hoping that they'll be able to fit us in December and early January at the latest. We are continuing to wait for the growth capacity report. A draft has not yet been released. I had a really good planning commission survey, our planning commission meeting yesterday, and we talked about doing a community survey and working with City Council to compose a short survey related to growth. So stay tuned for that. Planning Commission did review last night their housing element, the Puget Sound Regional Council Vision 2050, and the buildable lands documents at their meeting. This information will be included in the next City Council packet, and I will give a similar presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Thomas? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, so we will move on. Do we have anyone here from the fire district this evening? Oh, I see Chief Burke is on the line. So Chief Burke, would you please give us your update for King County Fire District 45?
Absolutely. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will be brief as well, respectful of time. October was a above average month with 109 calls, so we're slightly above average, although still just a slight bit off last year's record pace. Our deputy chief position, we, for the last year and a half, have had Ryan Dory in as an interim deputy chief. We're grateful for him, but he is returning to shift, has just been promoted to captain in anticipation of the new station opening. We've contracted with Prothman for an executive search, and we hope to have a permanent filled position on the 1st of April. So we'll post it probably after the holidays. I am proud to announce that we have hired 5 new firefighters also in anticipation of opening the station. They started with us on November 2nd. They've been doing a little mini academy, and we hope to have them on shift probably in the next week and a half. And so we're anticipating putting that station up and going at the first part of December. Now, as it relates to the city of Duval, even though the station is outside the district, I met with the Washington Survey and Ratings Bureau They toured the station. I gave them a comprehensive list of all of our equipment and staffing and those types of things, and was fortunate enough to get the station listed on the roll for inclusion in any 2021 insurance ratings. So that's good for the city as well as the unincorporated county. I alluded earlier to promotions in advance of the station's opening, and so we promoted 3 captains, and that is Ryan Dory, Aaron Merritt, and Rick Weber, and 3 new lieutenants, Sean Ansell, local, born and raised, and actually a former city employee, Connor Chess, also another local, born and raised, and graduate of Cedar Crest High School, and Brian Michaud. Lastly, I wanted to touch on the pandemic a little bit. I'm sure that everybody's talking about the governor's direction and crack down a little bit, trying to get this contained. And I wanted to let you know that despite the uptick in county numbers, our responses are flat as far as COVID-based calls. One thing that you need to know is, watching in the future, we've outfitted each of our responders with a half mask, a respirator. And what it is, it's cleanable, it's reusable. It's not one of the disposable paper masks. It's actually like a welder's mask, covers from the nose down. And that's going to help us go through our burn rate of consumable masks. And so as you're aware, you know, the shortages have been tough through the county, and even with state and federal assistance, it's been tough to keep those supplies intact. What this will do is this will let our people use these on the calls, and we'll save our disposable mask for our patients and people associated with the call. So that will help us quite a bit. So if you are unfortunate enough to have a call for an emergency and you see some of our people with a strange apparatus on their face that maybe sound a little funny, that's what that is that new mask. And we hope that once we get them fit tested and implemented, we will put out a little video and let the public know through Facebook and the website what they look like and what to expect, so nobody's alarmed by our appearance when we show up. Other than that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions from Mayor or Council, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Chief Burke. Does anyone on council have any questions for Chief Burke this evening? If you could please raise your hand in the participants box, that would be great. Or if Mayor Pro Tem Remington sees anyone. Okay.
No hands.
Excellent, thank you. Looks like you're off the hook, Chief. Thank you for coming back, and it's good to hear that you're continuing to not see emergency calls for COVID cases. I know we've still been relatively good about our numbers here in the Valley, but unfortunately we're part of a county that's going high, and so we have to fall under the restrictions as well. So thank you, and we'll go ahead and move on to presentation number 1, City of Snoqualmie Information Technology Interlocal Agreement. We have it scheduled for 10 minutes, and we have the Snoqualmie IT Director, Kevin Smith, here to do first presentation to council. Just so council knows before he gets going, there are some additions that we're talking about making to the agenda in relation to reporting and work plans, but that needs to go through their administration as well. So with that, Kevin, feel free to take it away.
Good evening, Council. I've already been introduced. I think we met once before. We briefly spoke about the updated ILA the last time I was here. So I'm really not sure which information in the ILA you'd like to have me present on. If there are any questions, I can take those up front and we can dive into some of the details, or I can kind of go through some of the changes we're adding and kick it off that way. I'll let you guys choose.
Kevin, let's start off with the changes because that's really the most significant.
Okay.
And what the theory it is as well.
All right. So we've been operating under the current set of ILAs. I think we're on the 3rd addendum now for the last several years. And what's come about is, as we've progressed in building up the infrastructure within the city of Duval, most of you know Andy Latham, who's our prime engineer in the city. He's contracted for 24 hours per week. He spends the majority of his time as he walks through the building addressing point of contact issues. People see him, my mouse doesn't work, my phone, the 8 button on my phone, desk phone doesn't work anymore. I'm having trouble with getting on the network, those kind of issues. It's stuff that doesn't normally get reported through our ticketing system, but when you see the IT guy, your first response is, hey, I'm having trouble. Can you come help me? And that's great that everyone trusts him to walk through the city and make improvements that way. But as we try to operate on some of these larger projects, moving the phone system from one building to the other, which is something that just recently happened not that long ago, it really takes away from his time in getting bigger projects done, mobilizing the city with laptops and surfaces to get them out of City Hall and into working from home. A lot of it takes his time away from doing the work that we have to get done to make bigger projects move forward and improve the services within City of Duval. But yet he's still needed to do those point of contact type issues. To help address that and free Andy up for some of those bigger projects so he can make progress and get that work done faster, I'd like to bring in an additional 24-hour per week resource, dedicated and located specifically in Duval. So we get away from the hourly charges while commuting back and forth between Snoqualmie and Duval. So that's approximately 2 hours every day that Andy comes down. Rounding up, I know it's probably more like an hour and a half. I'm not sure exactly what the bill rate is for that time, but it reduces the amount of spend that Duval is spending for resources in the city. This person's duty station is there in the city, so they show up for 8 hours per day, 3 days per week. They're fully available to all the staff to get those point of contact issues resolved quickly. And it allows the staff in Snoqualmie to focus on the bigger projects, strategic initiatives, and make progress and headway in a meaningful time frame and have predictability around when we can deliver those to the city.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Smith this evening?
Councilmember Napman?
Thanks for clarifying that. One thing I didn't specifically see in the contract about the extra hours, the location of that employee, that there would be no travel time associated with it.
Okay, we're still in the drafting phase. If you'd like to see specific language about that person's reporting directly to Duval, that's their duty station.
Yeah.
We'll put that in there. That's
okay. And then the other question I had is that type of a desktop support, troubleshooting type of a position is typically a less skilled, sounds not polite, but I mean, typically compared to an engineer type, computer engineer versus more desktop support, it's definitely more of an entry level position, and you would expect the compensation on that type of a position is significantly lower. And so I'm wondering if there is a breakdown on if that person has to work extra hours, how much it is, or if that was taken into consideration when we up the hours, because obviously you wouldn't want to proportionally increase the cost, because a lot of what we were paying for was the expertise of a director such as yourself and an engineer to help us do this. So when you increase the hours, double them, you wouldn't expect to double the cost, obviously, because what we're getting is definitely an entry level-ish type of a person who's doing desktop support versus doubling the director time and doubling the engineer time. So I'm just wondering how that worked out. And I don't think the copy of the contract we got had any numbers in it, actually. So it was hard for me to understand how that all came.
So those were supposed to be in the one that was in the packet. So if we might have had a little gremlin, and Jody can figure that one out and make sure that those get included.
There was some yellow highlights where the number should have been, if I remember right. Did anyone else? Yeah. Is that my, okay.
It was supposed to be updated. So my guess is what happened is we probably had one of those little gremlins that doesn't fully update the documents. I've been having that happen quite a bit lately using the cloud. So we'll double check.
You're exactly right, because I know I put those new numbers in there before I did the packet. So I bet when I saved it to a PDF or something, my apologies.
That's okay. Yeah. Anyway, well, I'm bringing up the question now. So here we go.
great. I have those numbers for you, and I'll give them to you in a second. The first off is the rationale behind how we do the hourly rate for our support. So the support that was contracted for in the very first ILA was for that desktop support, as well as the bigger strategic planning piece of all of Snoqualmie's IT staff. And we built a blended rate based on what a frontline desktop support person would charge for 24 hours per week, plus that additional support from a network engineer, a director, the help desk technician who takes the tickets, and additional second tier staff. So that original blended rate was built for that desktop support engineer 24 hours per week in Duval. Over time, that has been increased to address for inflation. And then what we did is we then went back and I had my finance department put together an additional blended rate to account for the 24 hours this person's going to be doing desktop support as a frontline tier 1 engineer, as well as now Andy's time as a tier 2 engineer, which is his real core function, what he's going to be doing, and the blended rate of the network engineer and the other people on my staff, as well as myself. The hourly rate that we came up with, or the finance department, unless I was barely involved other than giving percentages of time, our finance department came up with $95.96 per hour for the year of 2021 and $97.56 per hour for 2022.
Yeah, that's
And that's
about the same as what it was before.
Right. So because now we're taking that tier 1 engineer, that frontline person, they're servicing that 24 hours. It actually kind of has a negative effect on pulling down that bill rate that the team was having. It kind of dilutes the cost. And so you're not seeing an increase for this year because they're spending their time. That's truly all they're doing. They're not doing that tier 2 engineering work. Andy's going to be doing his 24 hours a week of level 2 strategic planning, along with the rest of the team. And so you kind of see it stay stagnant for a year because that new person is coming in as like you said, a more junior person on top of what we've already been doing. So it kind of makes things more stable for a year. And then next year, as that person comes up to speed, hopefully they're more well-trained, they're taking on a bigger role, and inflation kicks in and we have a slight bump to that $97 figure for the 2022. Do you want more detail? I can have our finance department pull together the numbers of how they got that number.
So, Kevin, could you also explain a little bit, the other part of the rationale of having the person on site, as far as like looking at long-term for the city of Duval? At some point, we may need to have our own IT department, et cetera. And part of your strategic planning of making sure that we're set up for and doing the things we need to do to get set up for that future possibility.
Thank you for bringing that up. One of the conversations that the mayor and I and Chief Hurt had when I first came into the city and took this role was the ILA has been in place for a while. A lot of amazing work has gone into stabilize the infrastructure within the city of Duval and bring you guys up to an operational level that it can be sustained by a smaller staff. The question is at what point is Duval ready to make that break away and become IT autonomous from Snoqualmie? There's provisions within the ILA to do that. It's a 30-day, decision agreement. But it's kind of a big deal, especially if Snoqualmie walks away with all the intellectual knowledge out of the city and we leave you with a little bit of documentation to hire someone, bring them in. So looking forward down the road, at some point, Duval is going to want to say, hey, we're ready to be on our own. We're going to kind of start training our replacement. The idea being is this tier 1 engineer that we're putting in there to work with folks on a day-to-day basis is going to be picking up on all those support ideas. They're going to start building that institutional knowledge within the city of Duval. And at some point when we decide to separate, or Duval decides to take on a more active role in managing their own IT infrastructure, this person is primed to step into that role day one and already have all the knowledge of where the servers are located and how the infrastructure fits together and where the networking components are and the contracts that we have with third-party providers for internet service and phone service. We'll start training them up to take over that role the day that we decide you guys are ready to go. So this is kind of a strategic play as well to bring someone in to train them up. Not saying that we're planning to leave anytime soon, but it opens that door so that when you're ready, you already have someone who can step in day one and run the ship without any issues.
Kevin, I just wanted to say really quick, thank you for answering my question. I was fumbling around trying to unmute myself and then Amy asked a question. So I wasn't trying to be rude by not acknowledging that you answered my question. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Anything else?
Any other questions from council?
I have my hand
Councilmember
raised.
McHenry?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for all of this. I think it's a really great idea. Certainly when someone's randomized by, having to jump into all those little maintenance issues, it can really throw off a larger plan. So I think you might have said this already, but just to clarify, as a part of keeping this person up to speed, I'm assuming, sometimes there might be slow days, and it's kind of a roller coaster when it rains, it pours, right, with technology issues. But if there are those slow days, are those the times you would take to keep them in the loop with those larger projects? So it's not just the day-to-day maintenance, but they're also looking at those big things you're working on as well.
Absolutely. And plus there's preventative maintenance we would love to start doing. It's one of those things that always gets lost when you're busy fighting fires, is making it so the fires don't start in the first place. So initially they'll come on board. We'll onboard them with the day-to-day tasks of desktop support. We'll start training them on where the password key files are, where the infrastructure itself lies, and layout of the city and how it functions. And then I'm going to be tasking this person with writing their own documentation for how to support, reviewed and approved by Andy, who's going to be the subject matter expert on all things Duval right now. And that way we start building up that support library so that if Andy's absent or this person is trying to fly on their own, they have some resources to fall back upon. And we'll start building up that, not just their tribal knowledge, their institutional knowledge inside their own head, but also on paper and in documentation, so that when they hire, you guys decide to break apart, you have this one person, you're like, hey, we need two. Like, we're getting bigger, we have more IT. That next person coming in the door has some resources to fall on as well, without sucking time away from the guy who's trying to do everything else while he's learning. So yes, we'll be bringing them into all the big projects. They're going to be a great resource for us to train up and again, train our replacement so that they're ready to go at some point in the future.
That's really great to hear about the documentation too. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm very big on documentation. So something we're lacking today, and it's something that is bothering me since the day I stepped in. So we're going to start building that, and this extra capacity will make that possible.
Councilmember Lingle, did you have a question? No question.
Great. Anyone else that you're seeing with a hand raised, Mayor Pro Tem?
No other hands, Mayor.
All right. Well, then I guess we can move on, and thank you, Kevin, for coming tonight. And obviously we've got a little bit more work to do on the ILA, but in general, if there's just some little things that we're asking for, and Councilmember Napolitan brought up the addition just to clarify in the language, that on-site person. So if council has any concerns with anything in the ILA at this point, please reach out to me directly so that I can make sure that we have the discussion with Mr. Smith and Snoqualmie, and that we can start moving this along, since there really aren't too many changes other than staffing levels. So with that, thank you, Kevin, for your time tonight. I'm sorry it started so late, and you and I will be in touch. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye. You too. Moving on to our second presentation, we have a presentation from a regional coalition for housing for about 20 minutes.
I'm Lindsay Masters, and Jody's going to be pulling up my presentation. Great. So it's nice to meet you. I'm again Lindsay Masters. I'm the Executive Director of ARCH. And I am here tonight to go over a few items on the agenda. Go to the next slide. So I would like to briefly introduce you to a regional coalition for housing, talk to you a little bit about our underlying structures, our purpose, our membership, our key program areas, and the impact that we've had on the East Side, and then segue into giving you an overview of our homeownership program in particular, as a program that has an opportunity to partner with you, and then talk specifically about what opportunity we do have in front of us for partnering on homeownership services for an upcoming development in your city. Next slide. So forgive me if this is all information that you know or have heard in the past, but ARCH is at its core an interlocal agency. We're formed through interlocal agreement amongst 15 cities on the east side, as well as the county as a member. We've been in existence close to 3 decades, and we were formed primarily to sort of provide a vehicle for cities to work cooperatively in their plans for providing affordable housing. Next slide. I tried to fit everything Arch does onto one slide. It was difficult to do, but these are kind of our core program areas, the ways that we help our cities to deliver affordable housing. So one key way we do that is we help cities to invest in their local resources, pull those into a trust fund, and allocate those annually to projects throughout the east side. We support cities' policy and planning efforts. We help them with their housing elements, their local housing strategy plans, putting in place incentive programs at their land use codes, et cetera. And then we have a whole segment of our staff that's dedicated to administering some of those policies as they transition into programs. So what that looks like is helping them develop contracts and covenants, developers, monitoring long-term affordability, loan agreements, and then we have, as I'll come to later, a whole home ownership program that is both offering up homes for sale when they're initially developed and then stewarding the long-term affordability as they resell over the years. And then finally, we have an education outreach component. We work a lot with community members directly who are seeking housing. We try to refer them into a lot of the affordable housing that our programs have created, and as well as some other educational and engagement efforts. Next slide. In a quick snapshot, this is a map of the affordable housing that has been produced for Arch's various programs. We strive to achieve coverage across all of our member cities. We've been able to produce not quite 4,000 units of housing through our direct investments, and we got getting close to about 2,500 units produced through land use incentives, development agreements, multifamily tax exemption, and other similar tools. And so that map is there. The blue dots are the land use MFTE projects, and the black dots are the projects we've invested funds in. Next slide. So focusing in on our homeownership program in particular, and again, these are homes located throughout Eastern County that have been created primarily through land use tools, so inclusionary zoning, incentive zoning, development agreements, similar to what you have undertaken here in Duval. And these are all developments that entail long-term affordability through the use of restrictive resale covenants. And so those covenants have some key terms. Primarily, they're intended to limit the inflation of the home price over time. And they make sure that the homes are targeted to buyers who need the affordable housing, buyers who guidelines. We've got over 70 developments that we have participated in now, and those are a range of different types of developments, family developments, townhouses, duplexes, cottages, and a large number of condominiums. Next slide. So the homes, because they're created through so many different policies and programs, they've ended up being targeted and priced to a pretty wide range of income levels, as low as 50% of the median income, all the way up to 120% of the median income. And so depending on those restrictions, we set the specific income guidelines for eligible buyers. Buyers also have to be a minimum size household so that we aren't putting a single person into a 4-bedroom house. Buyers have to live in the home as their primary residence, use it as a rental or an investment property. And then for new developments, we take a greater role in helping to select the buyers because there's such demand for those. Establish some priority policies to give preference, for example, to first-time home buyers. Next slide. If you have not heard of percent of median income, this is just gives you a picture and a snapshot of what the actual household incomes are. So for example, many of our homes are targeted at 80% to 90% of median income. A 4-person household earning 80% of median income, their household income would be about $90,000. Next slide. So this gives you a picture of how we establish affordable home prices. We use the universal HUD guideline that a household should not be paying more than 30% of their income towards their housing expenses. So we estimate the mortgage expenses, taxes, and insurance. We work with the developer to get an estimate of HOA dues that would be applicable, and then we assume a 10% down payment. And that generates a set of numbers that vary based on the prevailing mortgage interest rates at the time. So those prices can fluctuate a little bit as mortgage rates go up and down. And then for future sales, we follow a formula called our HUD formula, and that provides homeowners with some appreciation on the home, but it's limited so that the prices actually how the median income goes up over time, so people can continue to afford to buy the home. And that is a resale formula that we landed on recently and have begun to align many of the developments that were historically put in place with different resale formulas to this single formula. We did a recent consultant study on that and are excited now to be moving to a single formula. Next slide. So one of the significant things that ARCH does for its ownership program is marketing. It's really trying to match the opportunities with the households and the buyers who really need these homes and benefit from these homes and otherwise would not be able to purchase a home in the county. So we maintain a large mailing list. We've currently got over 1,300 applicants on that list. Not all of them are ready for home ownership, but many of them are interested in home ownership. And when there are new developments available, we market those homes to our mailing list and coordinate all of the applicants for those homes. We go through a process with them to ensure that they are ready to purchase, that they have pre-approval from their lenders. If they advance through the application stage, we verify their income and assets and household size. And then we assist them through the purchase process. We recently started collecting significant demographic information on all these applicants, so we're learning a lot about who our program is serving and where our gaps are. Next slide. So this is a lot of words on one page, again, trying to fit into one slide our entire process. And this basically reflects the range of potential services that you may be interested in using ARCH for as it relates to creating affordable ownership homes. So typically we are involved at the very beginning in drafting agreements with the developer. In this case, you have a development agreement, but often we see a second, more specific agreement with the developer that establishes where the units will be located, the layouts, minimum size and quality, when they actually have to be delivered. We stipulate that they can't be the last homes that are brought online in development on the same timeline as market rate homes. And then we also finalize the form of the resale covenant at that time. For the initial sales, we will be calculating and verifying the prices based on that formula that I alluded to earlier. We will actually inspect the units to confirm that they conform to a city's expectations. And then we go through that marketing process that I just described. We will be coordinating with the developer to make sure buyers can view the home before they purchase it, have access to do an inspection. And then we go through the buyer selection and eligibility process and work with the buyers on closing. And then that's year one. All the remaining decades of affordability going forward, we perform ongoing stewardship. That's a few key things. One is some basic monitoring to ensure that homeowners are in compliance, primarily with the occupancy requirements of the home and that they're not selling the home out of the program. And two, we are working with homeowners who want to make significant capital improvements to the home, make sure that they're doing that in accordance with the covenant. And then three, we are working with them when they are ready to sell the home and move on. So that's our basic process. And that takes us to the last slide, which is a draft agreement that we have in place that would contemplate providing some of these ARCH services in a development upcoming in our city. How we got there to date is I think we had some staff-to-staff discussions. The ARCH board discussed this earlier in the year, I think in September, and they voted to approve the concept of entering into some kind of memorandum of agreement that would provide some reimbursement for our services. And so we have drafted that agreement. There is a basic hourly rate included in it, as well as a stipulation that for this ongoing stewardship of resales, we would not be seeking reimbursement for that because we would presume that we would be able to take our typical administrative fee of those resales. So that brings us, I think, to the next steps and any discussion you want to have or questions about the presentation. Determine if there's interest in moving forward, how we would be able to finalize the agreement if there is. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Any council members have questions? Councilmember Langle.
You're on mute, Councilmember Langle. You're still on mute.
Okay, I couldn't get the screen up because of the slides. It didn't want to. Okay, my first comment that I think you have it seems like your production over the years had a nice split between under 80% and over 80%. So I wanted to compliment you on that. I'd like to take a little more, get a little more information on the HUD formula. Because what we know about the market in home ownership is that gap between escalation, even when there's an escalator limitation, that gap can grow over the years.
Yeah.
And so, in other words, to keep the portfolio, and the difficulty, I mean, even on a $300,000 house, a 10% down payment is over $30,000, right? So to what degree, I'd like to take a look at the HUD formula, but the other thing is I'd like you to address, what the other partnerships you might have that help the home buyers continue to occupy the units. In our case, we are looking at a possibility of a 35-year covenant, which is awesome. But those gaps between income and affordability, have to be managed somehow. And partnerships might be one way to do that. So it'd be great if you could address that. And I'm also kind of curious, you have in your slide, you have 770 home ownership units. And clarification on that is that your current portfolio, or is that your cumulative portfolio? And if it is your cumulative portfolio, what is the portion of your portfolio that is still active. Arch's old formula had an escape clause, if you will. And so I'm curious to see if the 770 is still your portfolio.
Sure. I should have taken notes while you were asking questions, but let me see if I can hit all your points and then jump in if I've missed something. So on
I have it written down, so
good. On the issue of the HUD formula and maintaining the affordability over time, that's a really key point. One of the important things I didn't mention is that when we price the home up front, we typically price it at the level that's established by the city, but we allow a marketing window that goes up 10%. So if the home is priced at 80%, we allow buyers up to 90% immediately to purchase. That's been a feature of the program since the beginning. So that 10% window kind of creates a buffer that makes sure there's a window of eligible buyers, that not everybody has to necessarily have 10% down payment. Another important thing is that we operate a down payment assistance program, as well as there's a statewide program that we refer buyers to, so that if they're close but they can't quite make up that final cap of their down payment, they can go seek some assistance for that. We haven't had a lot of usage of our DPA program, but it is there, and it's particularly for new developments. There's such great demand for them that it hasn't seemed to be an issue, but it is the long term that is the more challenging hurdle. Let's see. Also asked about the 770 homes. So that's currently in the program. I should say about 60 some of those are currently in development, so they're in some part of the process being either built or permitted, but we have recorded covenants with developers. So, and then as far as the other formulas that the program has used and some of the other terms in the resale covenant, we did recently go through a series of process improvements to try to learn from some of the past mistakes in the program, improve the resale covenant. Those were adopted over the last year or so. Moving to a single resale formula was one of those. There are some other things, including removing what I think you referred to as the escape clause. So that is no longer a feature of the covenant. And so those things we are instituting at resale to make sure that the old covenants get phased out and the improved version is phased in. Did I miss anything?
Let me double check. I probably will, but I won't take up time tonight with them. In the packet that we got the last time, I think it was the old Arch covenant that was provided by Toll Brothers. So I would really like to take a look at your new covenant.
Good.
And it sounds like a lot of really positive changes in the last couple of years, which is awesome. And let me see what other questions that I have on my little list. Yeah, I think that's the main ones right now. I mean, I probably will have some other. I really like the fact that you are working with in your developer agreements around, where the units are, the fact that they have to be available, not at the end. I think that's a really great aspect to it. And yeah, that's all for now. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other council members with questions? Director Thomas.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I definitely really wanted to thank Arch and specifically Lindsay and her team for coming essentially to our aid pretty quickly. And so I will be working with Lindsay's team and obviously the mayor to bring forward a sample covenant that they've used, and then essentially an updated agreement of services and / an MOU, and I'll get that into the next packet.
Councilmember Naplin.
Just really quick, there's some upfront cost of marketing, selling, all of that. Who usually has to pay for that? Is that the developer has to help pay to get it sold? I mean, normally they would have to market it anyway, and now they just pay you to market it, or is that something the city typically has to pay? And then the ongoing fee, is that always the city just has to pay to maintain their affordable units? They always pay just an administrative fee. Is that the typical structure?
So the developer does not pay for any of our time, unfortunately. It would be nice. They do assist with the sale process as well. So we do a lot of the work, but we also rely on them to show the units and things like that. So they have a sales team that's primarily working on all the market rate homes, but they also help us to make sure that there's coordination on the affordable homes. But our staff time and all of our administration costs are paid by our member cities. So those 15 jurisdictions who you saw on that earlier slide, they pay annual dues to ARCH to keep our operations going based on our adopted budget of each year. So all those city councils review and approve our budget on an annual basis. And we were recently add a staff position to the home ownership program, which was a really great addition.
So what is the typical cost, do you think, to the city for each home to do that initial sale?
I don't know that we've ever broken it down that way because we don't charge that way. We just have kind of an entire operating budget for all our programs. It's charged on a per capita basis. But I think we could certainly try to do an estimate of how many hours staff time. I believe we did put some numbers into the draft away initially, trying to capture a ballpark of what each individual activity costs us to perform. But for kind of invoicing purposes, that felt like a really cumbersome way to try to set up an agreement that would for you to use our time. So, but I think we do have some of those numbers. As an example, to qualify a buyer's eligibility and review all their documentation, income and household documentation, probably 2 to 3 hours of staff time working with that buyer to do that. Just as an example.
And you could end up going through multiple buyers potentially, because some might not qualify, and so it could kind of add up as you.
It could, yeah, it could. I should say too, I mentioned that we have instituted an administrative fee on resales, so not on the initial sales, but on those ongoing resales over the 35-year period case here. We have set that up so that we do not have to go back to our cities and ask for additional funding to grow our staff capacity as the program grows, adds homes to it.
Okay. Yeah, we're just looking, I mean, it'd be really nice to have just a ballpark number of approximately, once you add up all those little components, what you would expect a typical home to cost, because we would obviously have to, if we decide to do it, we need to kind of budget what we think it would cost. So
yeah, I think I'll just say off the cuff, which is probably a dangerous thing to do, but I think when we looked at there being roughly 30 homes to be sold and taken through that process, it's probably close to $10,000 would be my estimate.
Per home?
No, for all the homes.
Oh, total. Okay. That helps. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. You could.
No, it's okay. You need to know to be able to decide. Our main goal is to help you figure out how to make it successful, whether it's through ARCH or figuring out other ways to do it. So I'm happy to at least just kind of walk you through how ARCH does it and the process we've set up.
Thank you. We're really excited that you were going to come and present to us.
Good.
So thank you.
Other questions? Well, Lindsay, I wanted to say thank you myself. It's one of the biggest challenging issues we have in our time, especially here in King County,
Yeah.
to provide affordable housing. And I didn't see any dots out here in the valley. Would Duval be the first one?
I think we've got some that's not too far away from you over in Redmond Ridge and
Redmond? Yeah.
some of the unincorporated areas, but
Well, thank
use
you.
more. Kudos
Uh,
to you all for making affordable housing happen in your
Do you
Just
have
say that.
advice for us, Lindsay? I mean, we would be new at this. Is there something you want us as city council, as a city to know, or just those handful of tidbits that will help us make a wise decision?
Well, I think the first thing is something that you obviously are doing already, which is you're thinking about it. And so when you're making decisions about land use and growth and what types of housing you want to allow to be built in your city, that's something that you always have as a lens in your mind. So I think if you're doing that, you're going to be doing the right thing.
Thank you.
Councilmember Remington, I was just going to add, I was not in the COW meeting because I was in the Affordable Housing 101 for the Snoqualmie Valley, and Dave Steiner from Arch gave a brief presentation, and I've already received that presentation that was done, so I will be forwarding that to council. Honestly, it was amazing. It was riveting. There's a lot of work to be done on affordable housing in our valley, and there's things that we can do to help promote that. So it's like a win-win today for us is, we participated in that workshop and then having a presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other hands? I don't see any, Mayor. I think we've got you on mute, Mayor.
Okay, so somebody muted me apparently. I can't really tell with the phone. This is unusual that we're not even to our public hearings and we're almost to our 9:30. So we're definitely going late tonight. So I would entertain a motion from council to extend the meeting past 9:30.
Mike Remington, so moved.
Second, McHenry.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Remington moved, Councilmember McHenry seconded to extend the meeting past 9:30. Is there any discussion from council? I'm not seeing any hands up, so all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. So we'll move on to the first of two public hearings this evening. The first one is a final public hearing on the City of Duval 2021-2022 biennial budget. Normal part of the process to have two public hearings back to back as council continues deliberations on final appropriations. So with that, I will open the public hearing and turn it over to Director Mason.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Can you see the screen okay? Everything looks good? Okay, awesome, thanks. So I'll just jump in here and I'll probably go pretty fast. So first, the agenda, we'll just look at the change in beginning fund balance, which is pretty significant. Changes to expenditures and changes to revenue, and just kind of the big picture. And this is since we last met on November 5th. So changes in the end of the biennium budget amendments added. So the 1920 end of the biennium budget amendments added approximately 3.7 million to the beginning fund balance of the 21-22 biennium. 615,000 of that, of the $1 million change in the general fund balance, has been moved to the new building and permit fund. And that was just calculated by subtracting estimated revenues from estimated expenditures in the building department to come up with that number. Changes to expenditures, it's about 277,000 that's been added since the last meeting, and a lot of those are offset by revenues. There was a decrease in the amount for jail services due to the new agreement that Chief Hurt is working out. $50,000 added in legislation, 20 for long-range financial planning services, and then 30,000 to explore and implement a change from mayor council form of government to council manager. Benefits throughout the funds have increased and decreased slightly just from corrections and updates. We did one last look through our salaries and benefits to make sure everything looked perfect. And then there's been an increase in transfers out, an additional $10,000 to the street fund, an additional from the general fund, an additional $101,000 to the Big Rock Ball Field from the general fund, and then a decrease in general fund transfers into the sensitive areas mitigation fund because of the larger fund balance, beginning fund balance. The street just had a slight increase for overhead charges for services, and overhead charges for services are for services that are provided by the legislative, executive, and admin departments. So anytime we add any services like the $50,000 that we added to legislative department, it's going to kind of have a ripple effects across the other funds. And then there was a $3,300 for building and permit. Just a small overhead change for Big Rock Ball Field, but then there are some benefit adjustments that brought that down. An increase in REIT to transfers out to the Park CIP fund for the depot deck replacement carryover project, and then a decrease in REIT for capital projects because we've moved that to the Park CIP fund. And then Park CIP, there's the $107,000 carryover for the depot deck replacement, and then the increase of $20,000 for Boy Scout projects formerly in the REIT 2 fund. Changes to expenditures continued, just a slight decrease in water purchases, and then the rest of them are just benefit and overhead adjustments in the sewer and storm drainage funds. Changes to revenue, about an increase of about $222,000. In the general fund, this is just the overhead matching the expenses we saw in the other funds. Here's the transfer in from the general fund and the street fund. There was a decrease in the Big Rock Ballpark Field fund of park levy money because we've moved 50% of the park levy money over to the Park CIP fund, and then an increase in the transfers in from the general fund, and then the decrease in the transfer in from the general fund for the sensitive areas mitigation fund due to the beginning fund balance being larger than anticipated. And here's the parks levy money in the Park CIP, and then also the transfers in from REIT 2 fund for the depot deck. And here's the big picture. So we're now starting off with a fund balance of about $21.9 million. We've got estimated revenues of $47.4 million, estimated expenditures about $49.3 million, and it's about, we'll end up with about $2 million less than started. I just wanted to remind everyone that the estimated beginning fund balance will change quite a bit as soon as we're done with all of our year-end activities for 2019 and 20. And then here's the budget timeline. So here we are today, where hopefully we will have public hearing number 2 for the property, and the property tax will be set. And then hopefully budget adoption on December 1st. So I know that was kind of fast. Are there any questions?
Sorry, Mayor, I think we're on mute.
Thank you. I don't know why I keep getting muted. So I can't see the mute on my phone. So thank you for letting me know. At this point, it's actually time for public comment. So any attendees that are on the line, if the clerk can open up that so that if you would like to provide public comment on the proposed budget, now is the time. I'm not seeing anyone. We'll give it another 30 seconds here to see if anybody wants to speak to it. And I'm not seeing any. So at this point, the public hearing on the biennial budget is now closed. And that was our final public hearing on the budget. And we'll move on to public hearing number 2, a Riverview School District impact fees. And with that, I will open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening we're holding, oh, I need to share the screen. I apologize. I started too fast. Give me just a second. So good evening again, Mayor and Council. For the record, Laura Thomas, this evening we're holding a public hearing for the Riverview School District school impact fees. The district has provided an overview of their capital facilities plan, and that happened at our 10-6 City Council meeting. The city and the River School District entered into an interlocal agreement, and what that does is that allows us to adopt their capital facilities plan, approve their school impact fee, and collect that fee on behalf of the district. It's estimated that in 2021, we'll collect approximately $1.2 million for the district. The proposed fee for 2021 is set at $13,931 per single family unit. This is a decrease from $15,406 in 2020. The proposed fee for 2021 is set at $9,942 per multifamily unit, an increase from $8,635 in 2020. A couple of highlights. In 2020, the district served 3,268 students. That was down from 3,000. Oh, I messed up that number. My apologies. It was about 100. There's about a difference, a delta of about 100. The growth rate is anticipated to be 1% per year. This is down from 2% in their last plan. Student enrollment is anticipated to be approximately 3,474 students in the year 2025. Their standard of service remains about the same. This is about how many students they have per classroom. So right now for elementary, it's about 19.7 per classroom for the elementary program, and between 12 and 27 students per classroom at the middle school and the high school. The capacity projects are located in table 5.1. Currently there's a deficit, but the portable capacity is set to be increased to meet that demand. And then in the future, they're projecting building out new facilities. So the next step obviously is where we're at now, which is to hold a public hearing and take public testimony, and then adopt a resolution authorizing the collection of the school impact fee at a future meeting. Thank you. You're on mute again, Mayor.
I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, that's bizarre. Okay. So just like with the last public hearing, if we have any attendees on the line that would like to provide public comment regarding this, now would be the time the clerk can unmute you and you'll have 3 minutes.
Everyone has been allowed to talk, so they just need to unmute themselves if they want to.
All right, I'm not seeing anyone. Are you seeing anyone, Jody? Okay. So with that, the public hearing is closed. And we'll move on to our first item of new business, and it's Agenda Bill 20-107A, Comprehensive Garbage, Recyclables, and Compostables Collection Services Contract for discussion. And with us tonight, we have our consultant, Jeff Brown.
Jeff, you should
Jeff,
be.
are you there?
I'm going to promote.
You
Hold
should be-
on. I'm going to promote him to a panelist so we don't have to deal with. Okay, he should be there. And let me just go in and unmute him.
Yeah,
Jeff?
it seems like you have to unmute me if my
Yeah.
phone doesn't want to do it.
Looks like you're good to go now.
Okay, thanks. So I am here. So were you expecting me to give the presentation? Because I don't have a presentation.
No, we don't have a PowerPoint, but if you want to review, how do you want to do this, Mayor? Do we want to review the highlights of the new contract, or would you like to just open it up for?
I think we need to go over a review, and that was part of the intention.
Okay. So Jeff, you
Okay,
probably
I can do that.
okay.
Okay, so good to go?
Yep.
Okay, so this is mostly a continuation of your existing contract, except that we did basically incorporated about 15 years worth of improvements in the industry over the time. So one of the big ones that your customers are going to see is the fact that it's going to be universal carts for single family residential collection. So everybody's going to get a garbage cart, even if they use cans right now. And that is, that helps reduce the costs. And that's one of the reasons that the rates came in fairly attractive. There's no more manual handling of cans or disputes over damage to customers' cans or any of those issues. So that's a big plus for the new contract. And then there's also an on-call cleanup service that's included. And this has been done by quite a few local cities, and that is that all customers get 1 yard of garbage plus a couple bulky appliances, or excuse me, bulky items like mattresses or chairs or couches picked up just as part of their garbage service. All they need to do is call in. They get it once a year, and it's kind of randomized through the year, so it's not a big event where everything shows up on people's curbs. It is whenever somebody needs it, they call and they get it, and it's just part of the garbage service. Another thing that a lot of your customers will see, single family customers, the ones that subscribe to yard debris collection or compostables, will also have additional collections after storm events, and that's provided at no additional charge. And then for the commercial customers, right now you have a commercial recycling program that's based on 2 carts that are included as part of service. And then commercial customers pay for anything above that. Under this contract, they're going to get essentially unlimited service. So if they were, for example, taking advantage of the city's current 2 carts under the new but had additional recyclables they didn't want to have to pay for, they will now be eligible to get additional containers, and that's just part of the service package that they get. And then a big change, and this actually is something to keep in mind when you look at the rates, is that under the current contract, the contractor retains all the revenues from recyclables. And back when your contract was originally put in place, they were extremely lucrative. And over the last 4 years in particular, things have slid and then gotten very dire over the past year. And Waste Management has taken all the risk on that because they got all the reward on the early part of the contract. But under the new contract, all revenues from recyclables are credited or debited directly through on customer bills. So the rates you're seeing there don't include the value of recyclables. And for example, back 10 years ago or 12 years ago, that would have been about a $3 a month credit. So nobody can forecast the future, but when we get back to more normal market conditions, I would expect customer bills to go down by about that much. And for rate impacts, for single family residential customers, the rates are basically staying flat. As a matter of fact, if you account for inflation, and this is a 2021 contract or 2022 contract, the rates are probably about 5% lower in real terms than they are now. And that's even before counting the value of recyclables. For commercial customers, the rates will be going up. I don't have a percentage here because we don't know. It's highly specific. Each commercial customer is different. And it depends on whether they current recycle or they don't, or if they recycle at a 2-cart level but can recycle more if they have unlimited. And then they would end up being able to get more service and downsize their garbage container. So I really can't say anything about how it's going to affect each individual customer. But as you can see from the documents provided with in your agenda packet, the rates will go up for commercial container customers. And finally, for Dropbox customers, and it looks like you only have 2 or 3, Safeway and the school district are the main ones. Their rates actually go down a bit because they're not going to be paying a pass-through on their Dropbox contents anymore. Another thing to note is that the city's administrative fee is going to be about the same, at least in the draft that I had. I set it at 9%. What is changing is that right now your contract raises the city administrative fee by a per volume amount that's calculated across the rate base. So a 32-gallon can, every pickup for the 32-gallon can includes a volume-based increment for an administrative fee. That's basically getting tossed out. So under the new contract, it's just a straight percentage, essentially like utility tax. So it's just on gross revenues. And that means that it's a little easier to keep track of, and also it more directly corresponds to utility taxes. So it doesn't take as much to audit it. It's basically the same basis. So that is basically the idea behind the new contract. There were, excuse me, there were several alternatives that we asked. One was what it would be to add embedding single family compostables. And some cities have been able to move away from a subscription-based compostables program to where people sign up and pay for that service as a line item on their bill, so that it's just part of the service package, just like recycling. And my comment on that is a lot of cities were able to add this in past years because when they went out through a competitive process, the rates came down enough so that this could be added into the service package without affecting rates very much. Unfortunately, I don't think you're in that case. Basically, as I say in the staff memo, it would increase everybody's garbage rates by $12.25 a month, plus the administrative fee. But the customers that currently subscribe to yard debris or compostable services would see that subscription fee go, the actual fee go away. So you have a majority of customers would see the rates go down because $12.25 plus the administrative fee is less than the $16.68. But you'd also have 900 customers who have elected not to have compost service see their rates go up very substantially. And the math is actually in the staff report. But you know, you would see the majority of customers would see a benefit, but the minority of customers who don't want the service would see a very large rate on their bills. So that's one option that could be rolled into the contract. The second option is just a bulky waste collection event, and this is in addition to the new on-call service. So a customer that has additional bulky waste or garbage items right now in this contract can call once a year to get them picked up. In addition to that, this would allow actually pay the contractor a certain amount every year, including in the rates, to have a drop-off event. And there are details of that in here. I included this as an option that the city can basically trigger anytime they want in the contract term, including the first year. You could decide however many days ahead of time to do it, and it could get melded into the rate. So that's not actually a decision that needs to be made at this time. Another one is we asked for whether there were any savings to reuse the existing carts. And the answer is no. Waste Management provided, basically said, no, there wasn't any cost savings. Therefore, we retained the base contract requirement of new carts. And that benefits your customers because your carts could be 12 or 14 years old. This basically says, we'll roll out new carts. They'll take those carts and recycle them or reuse them elsewhere. And then people can start off a new contract with the new carts. And finally, I had a couple alternatives in there for alternative escalators for the contract. The base contract has CPI. Everybody knows what CPI is. Social Security is based on it. It's a fairly easy to understand idea. there are a couple escalators. One is to use a water sewer trash, which is actually a subset of CPI, but tends to be about 1% a year higher. So instead of a couple percent, you might be at 3%. And one of the reasons this is attractive is the haulers say it more accurately reflects their costs. And they offer a certain discount if the city were, basically if the city decided to go with this escalator, they'd lower the initial rates by a small percentage. This is usually an attractive alternative if you're looking at a significant rate increase and you want to stair step the impact by lowering the initial rates, even though you know at the back end of the contract, you'll really get hit with higher rates. In this case, I wouldn't advise doing that. CPI works. It's a lower escalator than you have right now, which is a mix of different items. And there isn't really any reason to try to pay down rates or essentially borrow from future customers to lower rates for today's customers. So that's basically it. This is the first run to look through the contract and talk about if there are any of the alternatives that are particularly desirable that we haven't already addressed, and also confirm that the administrative fee would be at the same level so that we can prepare a final rate package to include in the next round. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Jeff. I'm not seeing any hands raised right now, but I'm sure we have plenty. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can hear you.
I don't see any hands, Mayor.
Okay. I'm not seeing any hands. Okay. Well, if we don't have discussion on this tonight, I'm sure we will have some forthcoming.
Mayor, Councilmember
Or you're not-
Knapp has a question.
All right, Member Naplin?
Is this, I know this is kind of our first touch, if you, you know, since the contract's been somewhat negotiated, what do you anticipate? How many more times will we see it? Or if we don't have feedback now, or are you just gonna button it up and that's what'll come forward, or?
Really, it's up to council. I think we have some, Jeff described some options we have, and we can come back at another meeting and discuss those in more in depth. But really, I mean, it's up to council when you choose to approve it. And so we can put it on the agenda as many times as necessary to have the discussions needed to get to that point.
Mayor?
Yes.
If this contract, if it does not look like it's going to be approved at the December 15th meeting, we will either have to have a special meeting to adopt it or to approve it before the end of the year, or we will have to extend the current contract. This contract doesn't go into effect until 2022. However, we have to give a 1-year notice, you know, to start the new contract. So we have until December 31st.
Okay, I mean, I don't have any opposition necessarily. I was hoping our rates would actually come down a little bit. I know that in some ways it is because it's not going up. But I just remember comparing to other cities, our rates were so much higher. And so it's a, you know, I guess it could be worse, but I was hoping there'd be a little bit more relief on the rates. I'm relieved that our escalator will be tied to CPI. It felt like our escalation before was really not in our favor. So maybe that was my imagination. I don't know, Jeff, if you could comment. Will we be in significantly better shape?
I think so, because it was fairly popular to sort of follow Seattle's lead and have a composite escalator where you have a labor component, you have a CPI component, you have a fuel component. And the labor component goes up pretty fast. And the fuel, as it turned out, didn't go up very fast, but you combine everything together and I think you're probably better off with CPI. And the one comment I'd make to what you had brought up is, I don't want to say it's a hard 5% because I can't forecast what the rate of inflation is going to be next year and in 22, but The fact is, in real terms, the rates for single-family residential customers are going down, and that's even without counting the value recyclables. And if markets recover, then it could be a multi-dollar decrease in the rates that you're paying now. So, you know, other than the fact that we went out on the street with this thing in a pandemic, when everybody's being extremely conservative about pricing, which is unfortunate, I think we did pretty well here.
No, I had no criticism on the negotiation. I was just, you know, so the new rates seem more comparable to other cities around us at this point.
Well, the other cities haven't put a RFP on the street in the past year. You know, I think, you know, if Kirkland gets their RFP out next year and this thing is still with us, then I think they'll be looking at some unpleasant things too. But I think most of your cities, as you look around between Redmond and even Woodinville certificated rates or Bellevue, those were all done way before things turned upside down. And so all we can do is put the thing on the street and see who turns in proposals and what the rates are. And we have what we have.
And we'd have to do 10 years and lock ourselves into, you know.
10 years is basically when you look at the life of a truck and you look at the life of containers, you want the contract to tie to that capital expenditure. And so what I've heard in the past is, well, sure, we could go to 7 years, but they're still going to have to buy trucks. And so if they want to depreciate them over 7 years instead of 10, that's going to get really unpleasant. And some of the front loader trucks are approaching $400,000 per truck. So there's a lot of capital tied up in these contracts. And so we're always trying to find the optimal period that gives you the time to amortize a lot of expensive trucks and carts, but doesn't result in overaged equipment leaking and splashing oils all over your street. And 10 years seems to be the sweet spot.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other council members?
Councilmember Reinhold.
Yeah, first of all, I thought I was actually very impressed by where we are with this. So many things could have gone wrong. So thank you very much for your work. This is just really a curious question. I was wondering to what degree in the discussions, the fact that Duval is growing so much and there'll be more business here might have been something that not necessarily was a negotiating point, but something that came up in the discussion. We're expanding quite a bit, and that means a lot more customers. So just curious.
Well, what happens when you go through a process like this is the proposers will sit down and look at the urban growth areas. They'll look at what's on the tray coming in, and they'll make, if times are good, they'll put on their rose-colored glasses and they'll count on even more growth and they'll have even better rates. And if times are a little tough, they might figure that the population or businesses won't increase as fast and they'll adjust that in their rates. So I think they already factored that in as part of preparing the economic analysis for their proposals. So we didn't talk about it, but I know they were thinking it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other council members?
Mayor, I don't see any other hands.
All right, thank you, Mayor Potem. Well, thank you for joining us this evening, Jeff. We'll have more conversations on this coming up. And with that, we will go ahead and move to Agenda Bill 20-101A, the resolution for the 2021 Comprehensive Plan docket.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Troy Davis, a senior planner with the City of Duval. Tonight, we are introducing the applications that we received for the 2021 docket. This process actually started back in August when we advertised for applications to the public and agencies beginning in August 6th, and the window ran through September 21st. And this year we received 10 applications. 9 of these were city initiated. One came from outside the city this year. So tonight, last night and tonight, we're introducing those applications to the Planning Commission and City Council. Following the introduction, Planning Commission will make a recommendation on which applications they would like to see the City Council include on the final 2021 docket. And then the City Council will establish the 2021 docket by resolution. Excuse me. Once that final docket is established, then city staff will work on processing those applications during the year. And then the Planning Commission will actually make another recommendation on whether to approve or deny those amendments to the City Council, and the City Council will take final action by resolution early next fall. So it'll be pretty similar to the process that we just wrapped up back in September. You remember the 2020 docket that we just concluded. So to go through the applications, we've assigned them file numbers, of course, beginning with CPA-01, CPA, of course, standing for Comp Plan Amendment. So the first one that we have is from the Snoqualmie Valley Transit Coalition. They are proposing some basic text amendments. They haven't proposed specific amendments to our transportation element yet, but I have identified areas within the element where they'd like us to kind of bulk up the language with regards to transit and transit infrastructure. So their kind of common goal and regional goal is to promote regional transit within the valley in the region to connect people and provide better services to get better ridership, I guess you could say. So their goals are to help promote a system that is more efficient and reliable. The next 4 applications are all related, so I'll just kind of talk as if they were the same thing because they essentially are. These are kind of a carryover from the 2020 docket, but this is looking at 2 parcels of land that are, I don't know, I hope you can see my mouse, I hope. But these 2 parcels right here at the southwest intersection of Northeast 143rd and 3rd Avenue Northeast are currently zoned R20. And as you'll recall, the city upzoned these properties back in 2016 from MU12 to R20. And then 2 years later in 2018, we adopted our tree protection ordinance, which put a little bit more emphasis on tree protection, particularly trees that were of a certain size. Well, it comes to turn out that these 2 properties, particularly the property at the intersection, contains a high number of exceptional trees, which, as you know, is the highest level of protection under our protection ordinance. And so it created a conflict in being able to obtain minimum densities of 16 units per acre in that zone and retain the exceptional trees that are protected under our code. So the thought process here is to look at these 2 properties in a little bit more analysis, and based on feedback from City Council, is to look at these properties in terms of rezoning them to R8 or R12. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and assigned, created 2 separate applications for each parcel. One application proposing to change the designation from R20 to R12, and another application proposing to change the designation from R20 to R8. And we've done that for both properties, hence the 4 applications. This way, when we get to the end and we process, Planning Commission and City Council will have the option, an option to choose one or the other, or not to make a change for each property separately. We'll skip a few slides here since that kind of covered that. And then moving on to the applications submitted by Public Works is CPA 21-006 through CPA 21-010. So the the Public Works applications are placeholders. They are amendments to documents that are outside of the comprehensive plan, but are referenced by the comp plan. And we have these placeholders in place in case these documents that live outside the comprehensive plan trigger an amendment to the comprehensive plan. So we have them here. And of course, this one here is the city's capital facilities element, CIP placeholder. So as you know, the CIP is a 6-year project list. It's updated annually. And that's for our capital facilities like our water, sewer, and stormwater systems, and our community facilities, parks, trails, and open spaces. So if that list is updated and it doesn't trigger any amendment, then this application is not needed. But in case it does, we have this here in place. The next application is CPA 21-007, which is the transportation element 6-year transportation improvement program. Again, the same situation as the CIP, but with the TIP, it's again a 6-year project list that, as you know, is updated annually. The TIP includes proposed improvements to our city's transportation network, such as roads, sidewalks, and intersections. This placeholder will be here in case the update to that list triggers any changes. So the next one that Public Works is working on is an update to the city's 2013 facilities inventory and summary plan. So this plan, again, lives outside the comprehensive plan, but is referenced in our comprehensive plan in the capital facilities element. And this document provides an analysis of the city's city-owned facilities, such as City Hall, Public Works facilities, but it analyzes the condition and value and the liabilities of those facilities. So this document is being updated by Public Works. It may move forward without a comp plan amendment, but if this update of this plan triggers any comprehensive plan amendments to the capital facilities element, it's here in place in case that happens. The next proposed amendment is to the capital facilities element, specifically related to the sewer utility capital improvement program. So again, this document is referenced by code, referenced in our comprehensive plan, in the capital facilities element, but it's actually a supplemental document to the city's 2001 wastewater facility plan. So that plan outlines the sewer system and its existing conditions for wastewater flow projections, pump station evaluations, and system improvements. So what this document does is it helps, it's updated regularly to update current development forecasts so that we can better plan for the system operation and identify project needs, and inclusive of a financial analysis of those improvements. So again, it's a placeholder. And the last amendment comes out of our capital facilities element. This is for the update of the city's comprehensive water system plan. So the comprehensive water system plan, again, is adopted by reference in our capital facilities element. And this document guides the planning, scheduling, and budgeting of water system improvements within the city so that we can ensure that we provide residents with safe and reliable drinking water and fire protection. And this is a plan that has a 20-year planning horizon. This is updated every 6 years based on the Washington State Department of Health requirements. Our plan was last updated in 2012. So Public Works is working forward to move that forward. So again, if the update of this plan triggers an amendment to the comprehensive plan, we'll have that ability to make those changes to our capital facilities element as necessary. That was the quick and dirty review of the applications. The next step is for Planning Commission to make a recommendation to the City Council on which of these applications should be included on the 2021 docket. We anticipate hopefully getting a recommendation from the Planning Commission at their November 23rd Planning Commission meeting. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Does council have any questions for Mr. Davis this evening? Mayor Pro Tem, I'm not seeing any hands up on the participant side or panel side. Are you seeing any in the video side?
Councilmember Lingle?
Listening to first of all, great presentation. Thank you very much. What this got me thinking about, because there's so many possibilities on our facilities, is the timing of all of this is very important, because if we embark on our financial planning analysis, we're going to want all these things to dovetail somewhere, probably in at least somewhat in 2022. So I can see that it would be important to include especially things related to utilities in the docket.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Not seeing any hands, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We'll go ahead and move on to the next agenda item then. Agenda Bill 20-102A, Contract Amendment Number 1 for Bartlett Consulting. And this is one that we will unfortunately have to ask council to suspend their 3-touch rule for. So Ms. Thomas?
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Let me just get to my next slide. So we do have a contract amendment for Bartlett Consulting. We've had quite a bit of development this year, and we've run out of our contract amount. We had done a small contract. It was the first time we've contracted out officially for arborist services within the planning department. It used to be housed under our contract with ESA. And so we are requesting this evening to amend the contract from $7,500 to $17,500. We would have the contract extended through June 30th of 2021, pending our policy update. We use this to assist us in peer review, which is basically tree policy implementation, but we also get assistance on city projects and private tree removal. This amendment does include a new city hourly rate that is a little bit less than what is passed through the developer. It's similar in what you see in some other consulting contracts where the city receives a little bit better rate. If there are any questions, I can take them now, but we do have a couple of items on hold just pending the approval of this particular contract amendment. Thank you.
Right. Are there any council members with questions?
Mayor, I don't see any hands.
All right. With that, then I would like to request that council suspend their 3-touch rule and approve this evening. And that would take a motion to suspend the rules and then a motion to approve.
Mayor Pro Tem Remington, I move that we suspend our 3-touch rule for this item.
Second. Thank you. Okay, so we have Mayor Pro Tem Remington made the motion, Councilmember Naplin seconded to suspend the 3-touch rule. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of suspending the 3-touch rule, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, do we have a motion on the underlying agenda bill?
Mayor Pro Tem Remington. I move council approve agenda bill AB 20-0102A, contract amendment number 1, Bartlett Consulting.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Member Naplin.
Great. Mayor Pro Tem moved, Councilmember Naplin seconded approval of agenda bill 20-102A. Is there any discussion by council? I'm not seeing any. So with that, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to Agenda Bill 20-103A, an ordinance for temporary use and duration. And this would be another one that we would hope to be able to get through quickly this evening, which is actually related to business operations and COVID. So Ms. Thomas, please take it away.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let me get to this particular one. So obviously during COVID and the pandemic, our local businesses have really struggled. And what you typically see around the region over the summer and obviously into the fall is the use of what we call a temporary facility, which would be a tent with some heaters and tables. Under our current policy, that is considered a temporary use, and it's currently only allowed administratively for 45 days, and then that could be extended for 90 days through a conditional use permit. It's not very much time, and so I talked with the mayor and also with our city attorney, Daniel Kenny, about doing essentially what we call an emergency ordinance or an interim ordinance to allow for the temporary use duration to be extended temporarily for 6 months. And so we would look at going from the 45 days to 120 days administratively, and then up to 180 days with a conditional use permit. Just like our floodplain ordinance, we have to hold a public hearing within 60 days. So we've set that hearing for January 5th of 2021. If approved by council, this ordinance would become effective immediately. And ultimately, this allows for social distancing while encouraging economic development. And so if there are any questions, I can definitely answer them at this time.
I'm not seeing any hands raised in the participant panelist panel. Mayor Pro Tem, are you seeing any hands raised?
That's
I have
two
a question.
up.
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Hoag, followed by Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hoag?
I'm just a bit confused about this. So you have to do a public hearing in January, but you want us to vote on it? So I'm just confused.
That's
So
a
what are
really,
we-
okay, so that's a really good question, Councilmember Hoag. So remember when we did the interim floodplain ordinance and we passed the ordinance and then we held a public hearing within 60 days? This is similar because they're either considered like an emergency ordinance or an interim ordinance. This would be an emergency ordinance to allow our businesses to have the opportunity to have tents out over the next several months. And so this is a pretty typical process. We've done it before. So does that help?
So can they do it between now and January 8th when you do the public hearing? They can do it
Yes.
during that
Yeah.
time.
So
but the
effect.
public
Yeah.
hearing is just after the fact. Okay.
Yeah. It's after the fact. It's a state requirement that if you adopt an emergency ordinance or an interim ordinance, that within 60 days you're required to hold a public hearing. It's a really good question. I should have been more clear. Thank you.
Councilmember Lingle?
Yeah, I've got a couple ones. When you look at the series of potential extensions, correct me if I'm misunderstanding, but it looks like you could have a situation where a temporary use was permitted for up to 300 days, of which 60 days would require the hearing examiners. Okay, am I understanding that correctly?
Not quite. And so this would be to allow for a temporary use for 120 days administratively, and then for a total of 180 days.
Okay, so it's not cumulative with what we have.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
that's
Great
good.
question.
Okay, yeah, because I was trying to track the changes.
Yeah, they're not on top of one another. No. Thank
Got
you.
it. Okay, so my next question has to do, are we waiving fees for extensions on this? Or do we have a fee requirement to get the temporary use?
So their initial they do have an initial fee for the 10. It's pretty small, but we didn't provide a waiver for that. But I'm assuming that if council wanted to bring forward a waiver, we could consider that. We have for some other things like sign permits and, you know, the temporary sign permits.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we could bring something forward like that at I don't know if I can say the next meeting because our packets due already,
Yeah.
but for the following meeting, if council wanted us to bring that forward as well.
Well, it just occurs to me that given that this is emergency based and we've done some of those things before, that might be something we want to do. And so that was my, that question. And this is going to apply to businesses and nonprofits. My question there is, if this is independent of any other past decisions, then the temporary uses that we previously applied to DFA, would those stand as an independent decision from this, or would this potentially be added on to that extension?
No, it would not. Thank you. That's another good question. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingle.
Other questions? Director Thomas Mike Remington, who does the inspection? So they put up a tent. Who does the inspections on those?
It depends on the size. And so if it meets a certain size threshold, the building department does inspections. And then some of them actually trigger a fire inspection as well. So it just depends on the size and how close it is in relation to another structure.
I asked partly the fire question. You know, I see a lot of these are going to be heated, and many of those are just outdoor heaters that are meant for a patio. But when you put them inside or underneath the awning, and in fact, I've seen on our sidewalks some heaters that are, I mean, within 3 feet of an awning. It just scares me to death. We have older buildings, unsprinklered. It wouldn't take much to set a city block on fire. And I think just making sure that we have a good inspection. I'd almost, anytime someone has a heater with a tent, regardless of the size of the tent, I think we ought to see if we couldn't get the fire department to go out and inspect those.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember McHenry.
Speaking of those inspections, does that include making sure tents are weighted down properly? I'm just thinking of the weather right now in the wind.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
those are great questions. Yeah, the majority of them have to come through the building department. They actually have their temporary, not to go on, but because it's late, but they actually have a different timeline for temporary uses, and it's not compatible with plannings, and that will change next year because we'll bring them both into alignment.
Any other questions? Mayor, I don't see any other hands.
So thank you. And with that, then I would ask council to suspend your 3-touch rule and would be happy to entertain a motion.
I move we suspend our 3-touch rule. McHenry.
Second, Michelle Hoag.
All right, so moved by Councilmember McHenry, seconded by Councilmember Hoag. Any discussion? Councilmember Hoag?
I just want to say thank you for bringing this forward. I appreciate it.
Thank you for allowing
Absolutely.
us to do it in a one-touch. Do appreciate it.
Yeah. And we didn't, for a couple of months ago, we didn't know which businesses, if anybody was even going to be doing this type of effort. So the timing's good. So thank you for entertaining this tonight. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Do we have a motion to approve Agenda Bill 20-103A?
McHenry, I move we approve Agenda Bill 20-103A.
Second, Councilmember Naplan.
So Councilmember Henry moved, Councilmember Naplan seconded approval of Agenda Bill 20-103A. Any further discussion by council? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to Agenda Bill 20-104A, Indigent Defense Services Contract for discussion and or decision, but this is first touch, so I assume it will just be discussion. Chief Hurt. Chief Hurt, we can't, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Sorry, now I have to start over. I'll go as quick as I can because I have several items to go through. It's getting late. This is the first touch for the contract for indigent defense services. Much like the jail contract, we did receive a letter from our current defense attorney who has requested an increase in rates. We have not had an increase in rates for 3 years. This was taken to the Public Safety Committee last week. We discussed this. We have had O'Brien as our public defender services for as far back as I can remember. We did have discussion at the Public Safety Committee that if timing would have been more appropriate, we could have went out for an RFP. There's good and bad that could come from an RFP, but because of timing, we don't think we need to do that right now. I think that's kind of what we came to at the Public Safety Committee. So right now, I'm just looking for feedback from council, and then at a future meeting, I would ask that you authorize the mayor to enter a contract for public defense services with O'Brien, Barton, and Hopkins. Questions?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm not seeing any hands up in the panelist side. Are you seeing any video side?
No, I don't see any hands up, Mayor.
Okay.
I would like to add one more thing, Mayor, if I could. So this proposed increase, because of the changes we've made from our previously proposed budget for 21 and 22, it's really about it's less than $2,500 increase because we actually reduced the number of cases that we anticipate for the next 2 years because we're not being as proactive as a law enforcement agency based on COVID. So the delta is just under $2,500. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Chief. Mm-hmm. And if there isn't discussion on this or questions or concerns, would folks be okay with moving this to the consent agenda for the next meeting?
Yes.
I hear one yes.
I see a lot of heads nodding, Mayor. I think you have a majority that would approve putting it on the consent agenda.
Perfect, thank you. And so we'll go ahead and move on to Agenda Bill 20-105, the interlocal agreement part-time SRO liaison for discussion. Chief Hurt.
Let me pull this up. Again, thank you, Mayor, Council, Chief Hurt, Police Department. This is the interlocal agreement between the city and the school district for the part-time liaison that we've had at the Cherry Valley Elementary for several years. We had discussion last year about increasing these fees that we were expecting from the school district, trying to create more of a full cost recovery model. The mayor and I did have discussions with Dr. Smith at length. Dr. Smith is certainly in agreement to those discussions moving forward. We're in a unique position this year. I think Dr. Smith, Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he would honestly, moving forward, not this year, obviously, but in the next couple of years, he would like to see a full-time school resource officer for the elementary schools at a cost share savings and at an amicable cost share savings. That said, when I met with Dr. Smith, probably 2 months ago now, I went into that meeting thinking we weren't going to get anything, quite honestly, with COVID. And so the timing for me wasn't right to ask for an increase, simply because I don't even anticipate being in the schools this year. So Dr. Smith and I talked about a couple of things that we could do. He was certainly 100% in support of this, moving this program forward, certainly 100% supportive of providing the $40,000 again this year. And really all he's asking is that we maintain contact with the administrators at the schools, that we research and try and find a interactive online DARE curriculum that we could teach to the elementary schools in the district. We have done that. DARE has an online program now, and for less than $400, we can teach DARE to all 5th grades in the district. We anticipate doing that in probably March or April, and it'll all be online. And so for that little bit of work and just touching base with his teachers, you know, a presence once in a while walking around the schools, Dr. Smith has agreed to continue providing the $40,000 for 2021. Comments or questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Hurt.
Council?
I'm not seeing any hands on the panelist side.
Councilmember Hogue.
I'm thrilled to see there's an option for doing DARE during this pandemic. I just think that's wonderful. Thank you.
Other comments or questions from council? I will say we've had a chance to look at this a couple of times, talked about it. We were all thrilled to be able to maintain our relationship, and the school district was really open to say, look, we're not looking at cutting the amount. We still want you here, even though school's not in session. And if there's no disagreement, Mayor, I'd like to see this move to the consent agenda. Council members?
You beat me.
That looks
You
like
beat me to it, Mayor.
and thumbs up. So, Mayor, I think we can go ahead and put it on consent for our next meeting.
Excellent, thank you. Moving on to Agenda Bill 20-106A, interagency agreement with the City of Issaquah for inmate housing in Issaquah City Jail. For discussion, Chief Hurt.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Council, Chief Hurt, Police Department. This is, again, the first touch. I think you did receive a written report at the last Committee of the Whole meeting in your packet. We did receive a letter from Issaquah. They have requested to increase their rates. As a result of that, Police Administration did some review of our current status and really our needs for moving forward in the next couple of years as far as jail space and how much use we get. Again, the numbers are skewed a little bit because of COVID. We're not being proactive, but I guess to give you an example, over the last 5 years, we've been averaging about 350 to 355 days of jail days a year, jail beds a year. We've been budgeting for just about twice that with Issaquah. We did have a year where there was almost 660 beds that we used, so it is a little bit of a risk. But I would recommend, and I am recommending, that we move down to 1 guaranteed bed at 365 days moving into the next biennium, and also budgeting money for 5 additional beds per month with Issaquah at the non-guaranteed bed rate. That will give us another 60 beds a year if we need it. We also budget for beds at the SCORE jail. I think it's 100 beds a year. Again, when we budget for jail monies that aren't guaranteed beds, like the SCORE and the five beds per month additional at Issaquah, that's money if we don't use the beds, we don't spend. So it's in the budget if we need it, but if we don't, we turn it back at the end of the year. But it's better to have it there and not need it than the other way around. So this results in quite a bit of cost saving. It's over $30,000 a year for each year of the 2021-22 biennium. So I guess my recommendation would be for council to agree to go down to the 1 bed minimum with Issaquah, and then budget for the 5 additional days per month. Comments or questions?
Councilmember Lingle.
This is a comment. There have been several things you brought forward to us where we've had some cost savings. And I think we have to consider that the reason we can save money is because we have a great police force. And so that we benefit from that, not just at the community level, but on cost savings like this, because this is a cost decrease of $22,000 per year. That's a great savings. I think
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this would be great just to proceed with, and if not tonight, in a consent agenda even.
Great.
Questions or comments, council? Chief, I know on public safety, we had a chance to look at the cost of other jails, and it looked like we were getting a really good cost with Issaquah, especially as you shared, there's the cost of travel time for our police officers, and many of these other options are a lot further away, including up in Snohomish County. So I think we save money in several aspects. Is there a reason, if council wanted to put this on the consent agenda, can you think of a reason? Other things that you want to bring forward?
Here's the jail comparables.
So these are the nightly bed rates, daily bed rates, Chief? And then it also,
Correct.
also shows the number of miles and roughly how many minutes, it would cost to have somebody transported.
Yeah, correct. And as an administration, we really believe that staying with Issaquah, at least at this point in time, is our best option financially.
Yeah.
It keeps our officers in town, or gets our officers back to town faster. Currently, Issaquah doesn't charge a booking fee, as you can see, the other ones do. City of Kirkland would probably be a really good option for the city moving forward if they ever have availability. They're full. They don't have room for us. Enumclaw is certainly the cheapest, but again, that's quite a ways away, and it's also comes in where we have to go pick them up, take them to court when they have court appearances and those types of things. It's not cost feasible for me. Whereas Issaquah will actually transport our prisoners for us from jail to the court in Issaquah.
Thank you, Chief.
Great.
Councilman,
and I think oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to ask council, this was supported by all the members on the Public Safety Committee. Does council feel comfortable putting this on the consent agenda for our next meeting? I see nods. No objections. Mayor, I think we can put it on our consent agenda.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to Agenda Bill 20-108A, ordinance for the 2019-2020 budget amendments for discussion only. Ms. Mason.
Okay, can you see my screen okay? Everyone?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yep.
And I apologize for the rain. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's pouring here. So the agenda for tonight is just to do look at changes to fund balance, changes to expenditures, changes to revenues, the big picture, and then questions. So overall, the proposed changes add approximately $3.5 million to fund balance, adding $2.8 million in revenues and reducing expenditures by just over $1 million. COVID-related increases in the general fund, you can see, so this is changes to expenditures. We'll start off with those at about taking away about 1.6 million or 1.06 million. And the changes to the general fund are primarily COVID related increases. And then there's also an increase in the street CIP fund it's a project related increase that also has a corresponding revenue. And then an increase in the parks CIP fund for a potential property purchase. Okay. Changes to expenditures. These are primarily carryover. I'm going to go through these pretty fast. If there's anything, down below here that you want to stop and ask me about, please do. But there's about $230,000 added for capital outlay, or taken away for capital outlay. About 231 expenditures in services, and then about $40,000 in supplies. And you can see here that these are all carryovers to the next biennium, not the exact amount, but approximate. And here's the permitting software that's being carried over to the next biennium. And then changes to expenditures. These are changes in estimates, about 1.39 million. Salaries is coming down about $75,000 due to just removing two unfilled positions. Benefits, you can see for the same reason, plus tuition reimbursement that didn't happen. And then a decrease in uniforms, a decrease in capital outlay, and then just a slight increase in supplies. And then here's all the changes in estimates due to services. The big ones are just the professional services, which is about $80,000 in street CIP professional services, and then $25,000 in Big Rock. And then another big one is down here is the street lighting. We're changing the estimate for street lighting expenditures, reducing it by about $67,000, and that's in part due to the cost savings from the LED lights. And then here's expenditures that have corresponding revenues or a similar amount. This is the $5,000 in increase for the intern, and we're also getting $5,000 back. There's a decrease in capital outlay, and then there'll also be a decrease in revenues for that same capital outlay. City legal services that are reimbursable. Court services will have a corresponding reduction in revenues. The LED light conversion is an increase in expenditures, but we're also seeing an increase in revenues, and then also billable services. And then Summer Stage, there's the Summer Stage sponsorship decrease in revenues that doesn't match 100%. And then finally, COVID-related increases, about $315,000, and this does not include the $30,000 in human services grants and the $40,000 in emergency response that we passed with the first round of budget amendments. And then there's council approved adjustments. So the increase for the 275th Avenue sidewalk project, Doherty House capital improvements, the potential purchase of new property, and the Public Works roof replacement, which you can see was used part of this capital maintenance, the $75,000 that was set aside for capital maintenance. And then changes to revenues adds about $2.8 million. Transfers in and transfers out are, let's see, so this is a transfer to the contingency fund from the general fund, which brings the contingency up to the maximum allowed. A transfer to the street fund from Parks CIP. Part of it's old Parks levy money that can only be used for trails. And then the other part is about $38,000 in park impact fees, and that's for the 275th Street trail portion. And then there's new revenues. So an increase just was not budgeted last year, $165,000 in TBD sales tax, $5,500 in affordable housing sales tax. And then here's just changes to revenue estimates where we just underestimated the amount we thought we would get in. And some of the highlights are sales tax. We anticipate $262,000 more than budgeted. And REIT is the other big surprise with all the development and the sale of a really big commercial property at $284,000 for both of them combined that we are getting that we didn't anticipate. And then charges for services, $527,000. And a lot of that you can see is development related, the engineering fees and inspections, plan check fees, more in sewer charges for services than we anticipated, some water hookup fees. So a lot, and there's zoning, subdevelopment and development fees, subdivision and development fees. Excuse me. Intergovernmental, just a small dip in, in grant revenue, and that we will probably receive next year. Licenses and permits, still development related increases, small increase in franchise fees. And then miscellaneous is, a lot of this is the GFC charges kind of falls under this category. So this is also development related. And here's changes to revenues that are COVID related. So Big Rock activity fees went down about $50,000. We got our CARES Act money already from King County. We've received already to $123,000 from in CARES Act money from Washington State. We anticipate getting the rest. This number is actually going to go up about $10,000. This is what we expect to see receive from FEMA if they do not accept Sean's salary. So right now he's challenged that, and hopefully they will accept it. And then we've already received the $5,000 from King County from Councilmember Lambert. And then here's just a decrease in miscellaneous penalties. That's the water late fees that we were unable to collect this year. And then here's just changes to revenues that are kind of corresponding to change in the expenditures. It doesn't quite match up, but you can see here's the district court revenues, other grants and reimbursements, the TIB LED street light construction, and then just a reduction in revenue compared to the reduction in expenses. I hope that made sense. So here's the big picture. Here's our beginning fund balance at the beginning of 2019-20, amended revenues, amended expenditures, and then our ending fund balance, estimated fund balance. And as I said before, this isn't going to be exact. It will be adjusted. The ending fund balance will be adjusted after we do all of our year-end reporting and get everything tightened up for 2020. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Langle.
I'm sorry, I asked too many questions, I guess. I get, I keep trying to track the depot, and sometimes it's described as something that is continuing and sometimes it's not. Like in your list of carryovers, it's not on there. So I'm just trying to, and Steve just told me the other day that, the project's going to start right after Thanksgiving. Are we going to finish the depot this year, or is it a carryover? Just for clarification.
It's a carryover, and so I'll need to go through my list. I mean, this is the first round, obviously, but
sure.
Yeah, it is a carryover, or at least I have it as a carryover. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm thinking of something else.
Well, no, I think even by time we finish the work, if it all gets done in December, by the time we submit and reimburse payment, it's going to be 2021.
Yeah, and we're on a cash basis, so.
Yes, we are.
Okay, and then my second question has to do with salaries. You're reporting that it's 75,000 and change less than the amounts appropriated. In our July amendment, though, the increases in salaries that were authorized were roughly $200,000. So can you explain the difference on the two numbers?
Could you ask your question again? So what I'll tell you what the 75,000 is. So we went through, and there was not streets, but in sewer and parks, there were two positions that were budgeted but not filled. So that's just taking those two positions out. It's not 100% exact, but it's pretty close. And there may have been a small increase here or a small increase there, but it's taken those positions out. So, and your second part of the question was about.
Well, it was about the fact that when we amended the budget, we put another 500 and some thousand into the budget, which I believe was July, if I'm remembering that right. There was the $300,000 funds in reserve, and we released approximately 200,000 of those funds. So 200,000 out of the 500,000. So I guess what I'm trying to do is understand. We know that those positions weren't filled.
Yeah.
So in theory, you would have more salary savings. So
Yes.
I'm just trying to get the two things to reconcile.
I understand what you're saying. So I did not take out the money for the permit, the person that Laura's hiring, even though it's going to be a lot less because the time has shrunk. And I did not take out the money for the part-time accounting associate. So that will just be changed as beginning fund balance at the end of the year.
That's exactly what I was hoping for. Okay, great, thanks.
Other questions, council? Everyone's got a tired look.
Yeah, I think we're all exhausted, Mayor Pro Tem. And this is obviously just the first touch. So as you go through it, if you have questions, send them to me and Dana, and we'll make sure they get answered to the group as a whole. So with that, if we can move on to unfinished business, we would like to remove Agenda Bill 20-97B. During this meeting, we have received an email that the appointee has withdrawn his application and no longer wants to serve on the Planning Commission. So we will once again go out and do recruiting for Planning Commissioner positions. So moving on to Agenda Bill 20-90C, adopt ordinance. Oh,
Yeah,
Mayor Pro Tem, sorry.
I'm sorry, a quick question. So we have 2 openings now on the Planning Commission?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
2 openings. And it's been difficult to recruit. So I think people are just really focused on other things right now. So moving on to Agenda Bill 20-90C, adopt ordinance fixing the amount of the annual ad valorem property tax levy for the fiscal year 2021, providing for severability and establishing an effective date. And this is for discussion and or decision. And the clerk can provide the date by which this has to be approved by council to move forward.
By November 30th, we have to notify the county, so we can either do it tonight. And this is third touch, so no suspension of rules required. You could do it at a special meeting next week, but if you're ready, I say just go for it.
Does anyone want to see my slide? I feel like you've seen it so many times. The only difference between this time and the last time is new construction came down by $17. So there is a slight change.
Great. I'm not seeing any hands up in the panelists. Mayor Pro Tem, are you seeing any physical hands up in the video?
Oh, I don't see any hands. Oh, Councilmember Naplin.
I just want to say that I'm ready to vote on this. So,
well,
I don't know
let's make a motion.
Yeah, I pulled out my trusty spreadsheet and I looked at this and I feel good about the number. So, plus, I mean, obviously Director Mason knows what she's doing. So,
are you saying Laura and I didn't do a great job last year?
You know, everyone was just trying to, everyone was just doing the best they could.
Dana's way better. Dana's way better.
Dana is fantastic. I will say Dana is fantastic. So,
yeah. It's late. We're doing it. So, Councilmember Naplin, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion to adopt AB 20-90C, adopt ordinance fixing the amount of the annual ad I don't know how to, ad valorem property tax levy.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second, Brednicki.
Okay, we have a first by Councilmember Naplin, a second by Councilmember Brednicki. Any further discussion? Not hearing any, so all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. All right, moving on to Agenda Bill 20-91B. This is second touch resolution adopting the Riverview School District impact fee for discussion and/or decision. And this is obviously just what we had the public hearing on. If you want Ms. Thomas to present again, we can do that. Otherwise, we can have a discussion or council can make a motion.
I'd be willing to make a motion.
All right.
As long as there aren't any questions. I make a motion to adopt AB 20-91B, resolution adopting Riverview School District impact fee.
Second, Michelle Hoag.
Moved by Councilmember Naplin, seconded by Councilmember Hoag. Any further discussion by council? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving Agenda Bill 20-91B, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And now we're on to our second to last item, Agenda Bill 20-99B, interlocal agreement with the Riverview School District for a full-time school resource officer for discussion and/or decision. Chief Hurt. And if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Good evening, Mayor,
That's okay.
Council, Carrie Hurt, Police Chief. This was presented at the 11-5 council meeting as a first touch. From discussion, there was some direction that we needed to include language that provided for cost share for trainings. And that is the highlighted section in yellow. We have added that section. That was the only direction. Other than that, same at the end of that paragraph, I changed the spelling of the word Baird. I had it spelled wrong. Any other direction or questions on this agenda bill?
Doesn't really look like there is any, Chief. So with that, council can choose to approve it tonight, or we could push it to the consent agenda at the next meeting if you would like.
Mayor Mike Remington. I move that council approve Agenda Bill 20-99B, interlocal agreement with Riverview School District for a full-time school resource officer, SRO.
Second, Brednicki.
All right, we have a first by Mayor Pro Tem Remington, a second by Councilmember Brednicki. Any further discussion by council? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And we have one final item of business, but it is late and we have 3 hours scheduled on Tuesday. So I will take council's lead on whether you want to have the discussion about Agenda Bill 20-100B, and that's the ordinance for the 2021-22 biennial budget. And again, we have the meeting scheduled on Tuesday, so there's lots of opportunity for discussion.
Councilmember Naplin.
I just want to say I'm completely fine waiting until the next meeting to launch into this.
Perfect. I think we're all very tired. Is there a consensus by council on that?
I see a lot of heads nodding, Mayor.
Perfect. So we'll postpone that to our workshop discussion next week. And with that, there's no further business. So unless there are objections, we are adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Good job, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you all.